I'm going to show you a very short game between two super grandmasters. Jordan van Foreest from the Netherlands against Richard Rapport. It's a blitz game played in the Gashimov Memorial in Azerbaijan. And the reason I show you this game is it features a very nice and important tactical weapon. It's called the intermediate move. And what is it exactly about? Well, one side is capturing a piece and you'd expect that the opponent is just going to take back and the game goes on. But instead of just taking back, you can come up with a better, a more clever idea. And that tactical weapon, it just worked out fantastically for one side in this game. I'm going to show you what happened. And Jordan van Foreest starts here with a move e4. And we get to see a very small surprise in the opening. It's the Alekhine's defense. It's not the most common opening. It's named after the famous world champion, Alexander Alekhine. But it's a perfectly nice weapon for a blitz game. Black is developing the knight to f6 to attack the pawn on e4. So the pawn comes forward, e5, knight e5, d4, d6. And there are various ways of playing here. One very aggressive move is c4, going after the knight. And after that you can even put your pawn on f4. It's the four pawns attack. But Jordan plays it in a more calm way. He played here the move knight f3, pawn takes e5, and the knight recaptures. Black stabilizes the knight on d5 with the move c6. That's a reasonable move. And white has to decide here how he's going to develop. Various ways are possible here for both sides to continue developing. Jordan places the bishop on c4. And okay, the bishop is okay placed here, but in a way, normally, maybe you prefer to place your pawn on that square to really kick that knight out. But there are other ideas behind this move. We will see. Black played here this move, knight d7. So the idea is very simple. Black's position is a bit cramped. He would like to initiate some exchanges. So if you would take, you do take back. After castling, for instance, the bishop goes to f5, followed by e6. And Black's position is rock solid, very difficult to break. And having exchange one pair of knights really helps Black. So Jordan is not going to cooperate, drops back with a knight to f3, that's okay. You're spending some time with your knight, but at the same time the knight on d7 is obstructing the bishop. So the bishop cannot be developed. And what you hope is that Black is going to play e6, because then that bishop is going to be trapped for a longer period of time. Instead, Rapport played here the move knight from d7 to f6. And this may come as a surprise because, well, the knight is standing in the way. The knight maybe at some point wants to go back to that square. So now two knights are standing there. It's interesting position. Let's see what happens. Castling kingside. Bishop goes to g4. So that now the knight is pinned. The bishop goes back to e2 to unpin the knight. And Black plays here the move e6. So all the minor pieces have almost been developed. The bishop is just about to go to e7 next. At least that's what we would expect. White first goes for h3, seeing what this bishop is aiming to do. Is it going to stay on the board or is it going to trade itself? Well, if you do take on f3, you just give white a bishop pair. That's also not something you would like to allow. Then white can follow up with c4 and try to open the position later on. Rapport played the move bishop f5. Interesting idea. And I think the point is that if white would consider playing c4 now, the knight may come to b4. And things are getting quite tricky here, as the knight is about to land on the c2 square when the knight is even attacking the rook in the corner. Anyway, this didn't happen. You may prepare that idea with c4 by playing the move a3 first, preventing the knight from coming to b4. But Jordan has a different idea. He played here the move knight h4. So he's planning to gain the pair of bishops by taking the bishop on f5. Bishop goes back to g6. And now anytime the knight can trade itself for the bishop. But first, white goes with the pawn to c4. Checking out what his knight is going to do. And there are so many squares the knight can go to. b4, b6, c7. But Rapport plays this move. Look, knight e7. This looks very strange at first. But the knight is on its way to f5. After the move knight c3, the knight goes to f5. And that's a very interesting move because you do force white to do something with that knight on h4. What should white do? I think it's best here to take the knight on f5. And after bishop takes f5, Well, it's a game. I think black is okay. Just anything can happen. But Jordan played here this move. Knight takes g6. So he wants to get his bishop pair. But after h takes g6, well, this knight is attacking the pawn on d4 together with the queen. So you have a problem. You gotta do something about that. What are you going to play? Well, if you do play a move like bishop e3, getting your remaining piece into the game, protecting the pawn, then there is this plan of playing bishop d6, following it up with bishop c7, set up a battery with the queen, and there are a lot of attacking ideas against that king. And you can never really play a move like g3, then everything is hanging. The h-file is open as well. So you gotta be very careful. That's not what you should do. Black is better in that case. Jordan had a different plan in mind. After taking on g6, now he wants to open the position for its bishops. And that's normally speaking a good plan, because the king is in the center. And if black is careless, if you would just take the pawn, then you take back. And if you take one more time, it's bishop b5 with check. Now you got to make some awkward decisions, like going back with a knight. Then it's rook e1, another tempo, the bishop blocks, the knight comes in, and there are all sorts of tactics here. This looks just really bad for black. So black should ignore the pawn on d5. And that's what Rapport did in this game. He played here this move, bishop to d6. And now, okay, if you take on e6, probably you're just going to take back. And, well, it's a ugly pawn structure, definitely. But white is not really able to attack these pawns yet. It didn't happen in the game. Jordan played the move bishop to g5. He wanted to pin the knight on f6. What is black going to play? You may just castle kingside, but Rapport has creative ideas in mind. He played here the move queen c7. So the queen is getting out of the d-file, setting up a duo with the bishop. Pawn takes e6. Now, interesting moment, guys, because normally you just take back instantly without thinking, not spending any time on such easy looking moves. But here we are, intermediate moves. You don't have to take back, and Rapport goes for the move castling queenside. That's an excellent move because the king is safe and the rook joins the action. Now if you do take the pawn on f7, you just overlook that the rook is working together with the bishop as well. Bishop h2 with check. If the king goes away, it's rook takes d1. That's game over. So that's not good. What should white do? Well, things are looking not very pleasant. The queen is not in a great place. Maybe the queen should go to c1, but I don't know. It doesn't feel comfortable for white at all. Jordan played the move queen a4, which looks much more active. And it even sets a counterattack. If you do take back now on e6, it's queen takes a7 and white is capturing a very valuable pawn. You have ideas maybe to give a check or at least to attack the king at some point. So that's something black should not allow. Look what Rapport did here. He didn't capture the pawn. He played the move bishop c5, protecting the pawn on a7. And this is very interesting because the bishop is not only defending, it's also a great attacker. It does pin the pawn on f2. And when the piece is pinned, it's not a good defender. Remember that. After bishop c5, Jordan, it's a blitz game, yeah, so probably these analyses are lasting longer than the game itself. But Jordan decided to take here on f6. He wanted to exchange that bishop for the knight. And the idea is that if you do take back, maybe the knight will come into e4. With another attack, you are able to centralize the knight. You're even attacking the pawn on f6. It's unclear, but hang on. After bishop takes f6, here again, never expect your opponent to take back instantly. You should always look for stronger threats. Look at forcing moves, checks, captures, or counter threats. And here, this is what Jordan did wrong. He just expected his opponent to take back on f6. But what had Rapport in mind? Pause the video if you want to find a brilliant tactic now. This is the moment. And Rapport played here this move. Rook takes h3. Jordan resigned. It's game over. Absolutely insane. Let me show you what's happening here. It's a rook sacrifice. You're now opening the h-file. You're threatening queen h2. But what happens if you just take the rook? Well, then the queen can come into g3 with check. The pawn on f2 is pinned, as I said. So therefore, it cannot take the queen as the bishop will give a check in that case. So king h1, queen takes h3, king g1, queen g3 again. Go back and forth. Now the rook comes to the h file and it's ladder mate on the g and h file. Bishop can block, you take it with the rook. Bishop h4, you take with the rook again. It's checkmate. Just an insane move. Rook takes h3, overlooked by super grandmaster. So let's study the position a bit deeper. After rook takes h3, is there anything else you can do? Because queen h2 is the threat. Even if you try to make an escape square for your king, let's say rook e1, it's queen h2, king f1, queen h1 with checkmate. King can't go anywhere. So we should go back. Let's go back one more move and understand if Jordan still could have tried to save the game. As we see, the pawn on f2, that's the big problem. Because the pawn is pinned, it's not a good defender. So I was thinking, is it possible here to move the king away? So that after the rook sacrifice, the queen can never come to g3. You can always take that queen. But now, this is another very spectacular exercise I would like to offer you. And probably it's not even a line either player calculated. But I thought king h1 is an interesting attempt to do something about that problem of the f-pawn. Now the key move for black is an absolutely insane move. Another rook sacrifice. It's rook d3. And what is this idea? The rook is just placing itself on a square where it can be captured by the bishop, but you're threatening to take on h3. For instance, if you do take the rook, that's the big question, of course. Now this bishop is not a good defender. It was guarding the g4 square, but now the knight can come in. Look at this. The rook is pinning that pawn on h3. And with the knight on g4, you're renewing the mating threat of queen to h2. If you play the move f4 to close that diagonal, so the queen cannot come to h2, it's knight g3 with checkmate. Now look at this pattern with the two knights and one bishop. Beautiful. If you block with a pawn, then it's rook takes h3 with check. King goes to g2. And now another sacrifice. Rook takes g3. Pawn takes back. Queen takes g3. Knight protects the queen. King h1. And it's queen h2 with checkmate. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Let's go back. After rook d3. Now the rook cannot be taken. We understand that. But if white plays something else, let's say you do capture the pawn on f7, then here again, it's a sacrifice to open up the path to the white king. It's rook takes h3, g takes h3, rook recaptures with check, king g2, queen h2 is checkmate. What an amazing game, and black managed to win this game because of two big moves. Let me show you once again. The first move here is in the position after white captured the pawn on e6. Black didn't take back, but he castled queenside. Intermediate move number one. The second intermediate move is in the position after bishop takes f6, not recapturing the bishop, but instead creating a more valuable threat. And that's how you win the games. Ignoring your opponent's intentions, play for more valuable goals. Do you find this video very instructive? Do you like it? Did you learn something? Or do you find it just not important at all? Just let me know in the comments and make sure you subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the support. Thanks for that, and soon more explanation of important tactical themes in our fantastic game.